We'll officially call this meeting to order. We have a quorum of 7 trustees tonight. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees. We were elected at large to represent the interest of our community and our state in educating our students. Our mission for our students in this district is success each life, each day, each hour. We adhere to all pertinent laws, policies, and procedures in posting agendas and conducting our meetings. The detailed agenda information was made available to us at least 72 hours in advance, and we have all come to this meeting informed and prepared. We've just completed a workshop meeting where we heard reports and discussed much of the information needed to make decisions either in this meeting or in upcoming meetings. This is a meeting of the 7 trustees in a public setting rather than a public meeting. As such, public comment is included on the agenda at a specific time and requires us to listen rather than take action so as to abide by the Open Meetings Act. We are pleased that you have taken time this evening to join us. We are very proud of this school district, and we thank you for your interest in and support of our students. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. At this time, I would invite Ms. Scott, Mr. Hadnot, principals of Cypress Grove Intermediate and College Station Middle School, come forward, introduce your students that are going to lead us in our pledges and our moment of silence this evening.
All right. Hi, I'm Holly Scott, principal at Cypress Grove, and I have 2 awesome students with me that I want to introduce to you and have them tell just a little bit about themselves. This is Torrin House. She's a 5th grader at Cypress Grove, and Rico Rodriguez, who's a 6th grader at Cypress Grove. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Torrin House. I'm a 5th grader at Cypress Grove, and my favorite thing to do at school is like just seeing my friends and all my teachers, and my favorite subject is math because I love solving all the equations.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
Hi, my name is Rico Rodriguez, and I am a 6th grader at Cypress Grove. My favorite thing about school is ELA class because I like what we read and I like to write. I like to play sports, and I'm good at football.
Thank you, Rico.
Okay, we have 2 of our finest CSMS Knights. We have Dylan Broad and Ellie High. I think somebody might know her here. Okay, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves.
Hi, I'm Dylan Broad. I'm an 8th grader at CSMS, and I am involved with FCA, or NJHS, Student Council, and all around this school.
Hello, my name's Ellie High. I'm an 8th grader at CSMS, and I play volleyball. I'm a cheerleader, and I'm involved in STUCO and NJHS.
Please join us by saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Please join us in a moment of silence. Good. Thank you.
I want to make Mr. Hadnot nervous back here. Okay, Mom, Dad, please. Thank you, y'all. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Great job.
I'm gonna stay right here.
I'm sorry?
I'm gonna stay right here.
Oh, okay, okay. I was like, no, I'm good here.
You're good?
I'm good for now. To continue on with the recognitions, would like to recognize the artwork that's provided in the back. And this week, as well, this month is always, it's pretty incredible. It's from Riverbend Elementary School and College Station Middle School, and there are also some really cool holiday cards back there. So please take a moment to check them out before you leave tonight. Let's see here, and our consent agenda to item D. Let's see, and that is going to include item G, H2, J5, J6, J7, J8. Are there any items anyone would want pulled from consent? All right, do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And that will take us to item E1, board directions and reports announcements, and the superintendent report. Does anyone have any reports from any of our committee assignments?
I have Education Foundation. So Chrissy's Closet just hosted its annual Christmas drive, and they served 317 students with Santa photos, cookie kit bags, gifts for the students, and gifts for the students to give their parents as well. And Education Foundation was able to bless 71 students with a mattress, and that was in partnership with Sleep Station, Culpeper Realty, The Stack, Daily Company, Pride Cleaners, and National Charity League Aggie Land Chapter. And that one, at the meeting, they were at 50 mattresses, and then that's how many they had, and then between then and now, they were able to get 21 more. It's incredible. And that one really was, some people in Education Foundation saw a need, and they filled a need. It's amazing what the community can do here. I'm very proud of our community. And Education Foundation also announced its 2021 Senior Hall of Fame honorees. That's 65 seniors from all 3 high schools, and they were selected by their high school teachers based on leadership, integrity, dedication, and positive attitude. Also, we have our Star Educator program. 269 teachers and staff are being honored through that, and that's a minimum donation of $10, and a staff receives their certificate, a Star Educator pen, and recognition in the Eagle newspaper. So, did I miss anything? I have 2 other board members that were there also.
Almost got in trouble for that.
Almost. One more had walked in.
Almost. Any other reports?
I do. I went to the Shack a couple of weeks ago. Shack, that was the second meeting of the year to continue to discuss the health of issues affecting our district. And pretty much unanimously, the group decided that this year they should continue to focus on the mental health of our students and really our staff. And I think some of it was a follow-up from what they presented last year, but I think it was also just seemed relevant with COVID and some of the mental health impacts of that, discussed the mental health impacts on our students, particularly some of the virtual students, but also potentially, on our teachers as well, just making sure we're looking out for all those needs. And I guess maybe the one, it was a great discussion. I just think maybe the one downside of it, the way Shack works, is that, they won't do a presentation to the board until April or so, right? And so it's just something to maybe, I think some of the needs are there now before, are ongoing. So, but they'll continue to discuss it and bring, maybe some more specifics to the board at the April timeframe. And then the other one that I went to, Mr. Horick and I did last week, was the Teacher Incentive Allotment Committee. That's, a short-term committee that we're looking at how we can, really the 4 R's I think we came down to, and it was how can we recognize, reward, retain, and even recruit, the best teachers to our district. That's kind of really what that incentive program is about, and great discussion with a lot of good representation of staff and administrators across the district. And I guess the real next steps are, how do we measure best teachers, and we have to measure some metric of student performance. And so that's really the next discussion, is what is that actual kind of measure going to be. I guess the only other thing I'd add that I think it was important that came out of it is the group really got feedback from other teachers, but also in that room, is that they want to make sure that every one of our teachers has the opportunity to be recognized and incentivized for their work in the district. So moving forward on with that committee as well.
Yeah, just second that. I think that was one of the big things going forward was how to make sure that, excuse me, all teachers in the district are going to have an opportunity to participate in this. And so that's the charge of where we're at. And then obviously retention and recruiting being real big. In regards to the audit committee, we met today. And I'm going to leave everybody in suspense because we have a great presentation ahead of us. So no need for me to shine light on that right now.
Okay.
The PAC, the Personnel Advisory Committee, met virtually last week, and Mr. Grande and Ms. Perry ran a very efficient meeting, and it lasted a total of 22 minutes, which it might be a record, possibly. But there was, of course, a discussion on the latest with the COVID numbers. The big issue that was discussed was virtual. What happens with the kids who are not being successful when it comes to virtual learning, and I believe we talked about that at our last board meeting as far as the plans that the district has. But one of the big concerns that the teachers had was the concept of having one administrator on the campus or one administrator overall that they could report to and ask questions about when it comes to the virtual learning scenario. Ms. Perry, informed the committee about some of the statewide limitations on doing that, but it's also something that's constantly they're looking at, and it's constantly being worked on and developed. So that was about it. So pretty good meeting.
Mr. Martinell, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. And Mr. Venn, 22 minutes, challenge accepted. So, and again, as I said earlier, maybe Ms. Perry probably just needs to chair PAC meetings from this point forward. She apparently moves them a lot quicker than I do. But anyway, superintendent's report. First item, and we sent this communication out to our parents previously, but I just wanted to mention to the group again, this is a screenshot of our dashboard that we created on our CSISD website several weeks ago, and it is updated daily. This was a screenshot of this earlier today. It's since been updated this afternoon, but this was from yesterday afternoon. You can see December 14th at 4:15 p.m. Provides you our current student enrollment, approximate number of staff, active cases for that day. And also from this, you can see the number of new cases per campus on that particular day, as well as the number of active cases per campus at that point in time. Of course, this changes on a daily basis, but we wanted to be able to provide more of a big picture or collective picture to our stakeholders, our community, and our parents. So we created the dashboard and got that out so folks can view that at any point in time that they so choose. This is a breakdown of where we were yesterday again, and I will tell you the number of active cases is down from this. but just a little deeper. The number of employees we had yesterday that were currently active were 32, and the number of students were 58 for a total active case count of 90, which you saw on the dashboard. I can tell you at the end of the day today, though, we're down to 80. So it's constantly moving as far as active cases coming on and coming off, total recovered, those in quarantine as well or at home learning. Our last large instructional model survey went out and has since closed. This is just capturing what the fall looked like for us. So I'll do a little bit of a glance back. When we started the school year, we had 67.9% of our students on site, 32.1% virtually. As we move through the course of the semester, we've increased the number of students we have on site. At the closing of our instructional model survey, we're projecting when we come back after the break to have almost right at 84% of our students on site, 16% virtual. So you can kind of see how that moved through the course of the first semester. And also something that Mr. Ben just referenced, of course, with students that are in the virtual setting that are struggling, TEA allowed this guidance a month or so ago. We'll implement it beginning with the spring semester. And any student that is virtual, that is failing one or more courses or not engaging from an attendance standpoint, will be required to return to on-site instruction. We simply can't allow them to get any farther behind if they're not being successful. And I know that through the course of the fall, our principals and counselors and assistant principals have done a wonderful job encouraging those students if they were struggling to return. We couldn't require it until a TEA issued this direction a little while ago. So we were absolutely moving that direction beginning second semester. And I know our campus is doing work in notifying those particular families and students right now that will need to return to on-site instruction if they're not performing in the virtual setting. I want to reflect back on the fall as a whole. Just we have tried to be very targeted and proactive with our efforts. You know, right when we start the school year, it was very evident that the amount of work, in particular our teachers, working out of whether on-site or virtual instructional settings, and the workload was just quite a bit, very heavy workload for our folks. But I want to kind of go back and reflect on the fall as a whole so you kind of can capture or understand our efforts through the course of the semester to remedy things in a long-term approach. So all of our efforts have been targeted, and they're intended to really address the workloads of our teachers so that we can sustain our effort through the course of the entirety of the school year. So I'm going to start back, again, express my appreciation to the board, and I know our employees appreciate this, of the approval of the raises this summer coming into the school year, not really knowing what our circumstances would be. So each of our teachers had received a raise of at least $1,000. We did 2% for our auxiliary and paraprofessional employees. That was 2% off the midpoint of their pay grade, and 1.5% for our administrative professional employees. And again, an appreciation there, not knowing what enrollment was going to look like and what this school year was going to look like. That was much appreciated in your confidence in doing that early and in the beginning of the school year. As we have started the year and kind of moved through the semester, I just showed you the change in instructional models. Anytime we have any of that movement, we meet with principals. Principals visit with counselors. We were meeting every week or every 2 weeks and constantly looking at our numbers, and was there any way to adjust teacher assignments to try to make them as pure as possible, either purely on-site or purely virtual, if there were any way to do that. And in many cases, we would have a particular teacher, maybe an intermediate school teacher, that were teaching virtual students from other intermediate schools, just so we could be efficient, so we can maybe make that position a pure virtual position and ensure someone else had a pure on-site position, just to try to manage workloads. And that has evolved through the course of the semester. And I can tell you from the beginning of August to now, K through 8, while we still have some doing a mix of the two, a vast majority of our teachers are one or the other. Where you see some more of the virtual and on-site responsibilities is at the high school level when we have such specialized courses. Where we have teachers, and we started this early on, really with the first grading cycle, where we have teachers serving in both capacity, both on-site and virtual, and we're not, we can't work an allocated virtual period into their day per se. So maybe they're helping with a virtual assignment, they're doing on-site, they have their conference period, but they're helping support a virtual section as well. Then we've been providing those folks that carry that with extra duty pay. What we've been doing is $500 per 6 weeks or $750 per 9 weeks. Through the first semester, we would have paid out just shy of $115,000 extra duty pay through the course of the fall. And again, this is for those folks that if they have both on-site and virtual, and we were not able to schedule them to give them time, a virtual period, or if they have 2 virtual periods they're responsible for, and we've only been able to give them time for 1, then we compensate for that difference. Again, a very targeted approach and a proactive. We've been doing this since the first 6 weeks. Something else we've done to try to relieve some pressure points throughout the district and teacher workloads, we have added teachers various numbers at all levels throughout the district at this point in time. And again, that is recognizing the workloads our folks had very quickly and adding some positions so that we could work toward those more pure teaching assignments or try to relieve some of the workload that our teachers were carrying. So we have had teachers through the course of the fall, at least 1 or at least 2, and even more at the various levels throughout the district, wherever we have particular tipping points and areas of need. The junior system analyst, that is support on the back end of Schoology, our learning management system. Integration specialist is more the technology support from CNI. So again, trying to provide support. These things that we're doing right now, these that I've just mentioned, will continue to occur throughout the course of the entire year. And so this addresses those workloads through the course of the entire school year. It's not just a one-time fix. We have also hired temporary staff to support our virtual instruction. We have several retired teachers. They're actually coming to work in a few days a week, in particular at a high school level. For example, we have a retired math teacher, and she comes in, works a couple of days a week, prepares some virtual lessons for our teachers to use and drop in their Schoology folders and provide support from that end as well. So a lot of proactive and targeted efforts. I can tell you moving into the spring, and Mr. Ross is here, I don't want to embarrass him, but for example, in CTE, there are so many different offerings, and so many of those teachers are being pulled in different ways because they may be the only person that teaches a particular thing. But Mr. Ross has recruited many kiddos that were or young people that were student teaching in the fall graduating semester and bringing them in as temporary employees through the course of the spring to help take some of the virtual sections and some of this work to help with the workloads of our teachers. So just kind of wanted to capture our efforts through the course of the fall. We've been very intentional, and we hope that these efforts, and they'll continue to evolve through the course of the spring, but we hope that it pays dividends throughout the course of the entire year. Celebrations. I had 2 wonderful celebrations. However, Ms. Nolan already stole them from me, so I'll just go ditto to what Geraldine said. The student needs and the new mattress, the Education Foundation, and a number of the businesses here in town partnering for that. So thank you to those folks and their work. That number has changed, went up through the course of the last several days, obviously. And then We planned it, Ms. Nolan. I have to give you a heads up on my celebrations in the future. But Chrissy's Closet drive-through and touching 319 families on Saturday. We're always grateful for the work of our folks just going above and beyond and how much they have done for their students and giving back to the community during the course of all this and the fall semester. Some upcoming events, of course, we'll be on break starting December 21st. We have a comp day on the 4th, and that's a student holiday, but a staff comp day. First day of spring semesters on January the 5th. Teacher Incentive Allotment Committee that Ms. McAdams and Ms. Horak just spoke of meets again on the 12th of January, Executive Committee on the 13th, and a workshop and board meeting on January the 19th, and I'll hold there. Mr. Nugent, that concludes Superintendent's update.
That was a good one. Thank you. No, in all seriousness, it's obviously been kind of a weird year, and it's been difficult for everyone. And because of where we get to have a front row seat to how difficult it is with the schools, and I have wanted to spike the football so often this fall because I've been so proud of what our district has done. But I didn't want to jinx anything. And I realized we still have 3 days left of the semester. But Mr. Martindale, thank you. To you, your incredible team. Everyone in this room has gone above and beyond. And I think I could probably say for the entire board that we are incredibly proud of what has happened in certainly unprecedented times. And there's not a time that I speak to someone from around the state and they speak glowingly about what they hear going on here. They couldn't believe that we were going in person to start off a district our size. And what y'all have done has been amazing. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I jump in with a quick question back on your presentation, Mr. Martindale, just about the COVID dashboard, which I love that we're going to have all the data up and always available for everybody. Do you remember, though, in the communication, if we were clear that this would be in place of emails from the schools? Because I did have at least twice 2 people just kind of casually say that, oh, we don't have any cases at our schools recently because I haven't gotten any emails. And I had to remind them that the emails were not necessarily coming out from the school, correct? That they would be on you'd have to go on the dashboard.
I'd have to look back at the email exactly, but I think it said instead of filling up your inbox, we've created a dashboard and provided the link. So I don't know that I said it directly. I thought I implied it fairly clearly, but.
Obviously, I'm aware of it. I just want to make sure everybody else from, in the community is aware that the dashboard is there 24/7 to access, but that just because you're not getting emails does not mean.
Doesn't mean there are cases, absolutely.
Campus.
And that what the dashboard does provide us that the email doesn't is you can see the whole picture, because otherwise you're just getting an email relative, like you were mentioning, to your specific campus. So this way, I think it provides a lot more information really to the community.
Certainly, and it's a giant link right there on the front of the website. So, thank you.
All right, that will take us to item F, hearing of citizens. Do we have any cards? We do not. Okay. Let's take us to H1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to board policy EIC local. Mr. Martindale.
We discussed this to a significant degree at workshop earlier today. So this is just the final step in approving the adjustment to this particular policy. Again, at workshop earlier, we discussed the implications of what our course offerings would look like last year. Again, this is just the final piece in adjusting our policy to reflect that. Dr. Trammell?
Hey, good evening again. We are coming to seek approval of a slight change in policy due to the work of the Pre-AP committee and their recommendation. Just a reminder to the board, this is a 5-page policy, but the only change that is needed is to change the pre-AP and honors language to advanced. We are seeking a recommendation of approval for this change to EIC local policy to the board if there is no further discussion tonight.
A quick comment just to say that in all the discussion that we've had on this issue, I don't think there's really ever been a concern about getting rid of the designation of pre-AP, right? That's really not a benefit for the district right now to have that. So I certainly support it. And if we're ready, I will make a motion that we accept the changes to our policy EIC local as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just that for those who may not have heard the workshop, that the district will be looking at the grade point average as it applies to these courses beginning in the fall of next year. There'll be a committee formed, is that correct?
That is correct, around September.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's also important to note, Mr. Mann, that any changes with that would be enacted with an incoming freshman class.
All right, without any further discussion, we have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. That will take us to item I1, consider approval of new administrator contract as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. As the board is aware that Ms. Parkerson will be joining us here in central office in January as Executive Director of Secondary Education. And with her move over, we had the vacancy of principal of College Station High School. We went through a process of candidate screening, which included members of the leadership team at College Station High School, as well as several central office staff. The applicant screening occurred. We narrowed that down and selected a group of to interview. The interviews occurred, and the interview committee consisted again of members from the leadership team at College Station High School, as well as myself, Ms. Parkerson, and Mrs. Perry. From the initial interview, 2 of the 4 candidates were moved to the next round. The second round interviews occur here at central office with me and Ms. Perry and Ms. Parkerson. And through that process, it gives me great pleasure to recommend Justin Grimes as the new principal of College Station High School. Mr. Grimes' administrative career started in 2012, or do we say 11, Mr. Grimes, for planning purposes. He was assistant principal at College Station High School from 2012 to 2016. The 2 years following that, he was principal at Huntsville High School and has been the principal at College View High School here in CSISD for the last 2.5 years. So again, I recommend Mr. Grimes as principal of College Station High School. He will begin his work there when we return from the holiday break, and I will be working on naming an interim at College View High School for the course of the spring semester.
I'd move to approve the recommendation from the superintendent of schools to issue a new administrative contract to Justin Grimes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say I'm excited. The future is bright, and it's not lost on me that you're wearing purple tonight. You are ready.
All right, so without any further discussion, we have our motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Grimes, you take a minute or two and introduce your family, please, sir.
Absolutely. So with me tonight, I have my beautiful bride, who is a teacher here at CSISD on Trail, fifth grade social studies. She's been by my side through all of the previous positions that you mentioned, and as anybody in this room knows, any great leader is because of the woman you have next to you. So I'm thankful for her and everything she's meant to me. I also have a graduating senior who'll be walking the stage, all the gray hairs on my head. Largely because of this one right here, so we're really excited about her graduating at College Station High School Cougar in May, and really proud of her and where the next steps in her path are going to lead her as a Cougar out in the world. And then we also have a freshman who is at CSHS, and we're really excited about the path that she's going to lead at CSHS. She's a member of the Lady Cougar basketball team, National Honor Society. Grace Grimes is, I'm going to go back to her. Very, very proud of her. She was just named as a CSISD Hall of Fame honoree, so we're really proud of her and everything that everybody in this room knows what that represents. So proud of her, proud of both of our girls, and thank you all again.
Well, it was exciting 2.5 years ago to welcome you back home. And now even, I guess you're kind of gone further back since this is where I met you when you were at CSHS as an assistant principal. So we are delighted with your new position. And unfortunately, you once again, you've left a hole somewhere. So now we got to take care of that. So, but welcome back. And takes us to J1. Make sure, yes, not skipping anything.
I too.
Oh, I did skip something. There we go. I already crossed it off. I too, I'm sorry. Consideration, discussion, and possible action related to a resolution regarding the extension of employee leave provisions in the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act. Mr. Martindale.
The leave provisions, the federal leave provisions provided for the fall for employees is set to expire at the end of the month. The resolution, I'll turn things over to Ms. Perry here momentarily, would allow us to extend those leave provisions to our employees through the course of the spring semester. And with further information and more details, Ms. Perry?
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Martindale, members of the board. This is an item we have not had an opportunity to discuss as a group, and the reason for that is that we weren't expecting to need to. The Families First Coronavirus Relief Act expires on December 31st, and under the circumstances, we thought perhaps that would be extended at the federal level. However, with all of the transition in administration happening at this point and a close eye on this, we are not seeing movement to that end. And so through discussion with our policy consultants, we would like to propose a resolution to continue these benefits through the remainder of the current contract year, which is July 30th. We think that this is important because our employees need to prioritize their health and the health of their families during this time. This leave provision, which includes an additional 10 days of paid leave for eligible employees, is really very specifically around COVID-related reasons for absence. We've had a number of employees that have needed this and continue to need this, and this would not add additional days to those existing provisions, but yet extend for those who have any of those 10 days still in their bank, or should they have needs related to childcare. So we think that this is important to do for our staff, for their families, and to make sure that we continue to keep our schools safe and have folks prioritize their health and safety and stay home if they are either in quarantine or having symptoms themselves or caring for those family members who are. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I just have one question, one thought on this. When we have teachers and staff that need to stay home, maybe for quarantine specifically, and then we're asking them to actually still, some of them I know are still doing their work from home. Are those counted under this or not?
So that's absolutely part of the consideration. If an employee is able to work remotely, then it doesn't use leave days. We have a process in place where we look at the type and nature of the work, and if that person can continue to work either full-time or part-time from home, then it would not result in eligibility for these additional days.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think considering the nature of, like you said, Ms. Perry, we were hoping that something would be resolved on the federal level, but it is nice to know we can bring it down to our local level and support our district and our staff and teachers. So, I mean, I know we've got possible action, but there's no reason I can see why I can't support this because it's needed. This isn't going anywhere, vaccine or no vaccine. We're going to have to deal with it going into the spring. So that's just kind of where I'm at on it.
I just say I agree. I mean, and I think it's not only supporting our staff, and it's also keeping our staff safe and our students safe, right? Because when somebody needs to be quarantining, we need to support that. So I definitely agree. So I'll make a motion that we accept the resolution as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Without such, we have our motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Now we get to go to J1. Glad we didn't skip that. All right, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the annual enrollment review and report for FC Local. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. Board members, we will, our annual enrollment review, and this stems directly from local policy for FC Local, adopted several years ago. And really, we want to take the information that Mr. Templeton shared with us earlier and apply the specifics of this policy. I want to kind of take my time so you have time to process as we go, because there'll be lots of numbers coming up here shortly. But basically, what the policy says, each November and December, administration shall review facilities and enrollment projection data. That's the information we get from Mr. Templeton. We'll look at demographic data and look at 5-year projections and apply those to school capacity. Present the results to the board. Facility utilization, and again, I'll kind of show you what that is here shortly. The parameters we'll use on facility utilization, we would note anything below 85% of the capacity number that we use for a particular facility, and anything above 110% of building capacity. Comparable composition is the other piece of this particular policy, and it's looking at the current proportion of economically disadvantaged students at each school. This is your percentage of students on free or reduced lunch. At the intermediate and middle school levels, we're looking for anything greater than 15% variance. And at the comprehensive high schools, our marker to watch for is a variance of 12 percentage points. Again, this is data that Bob shared with us earlier. I just laid the format out a little bit. Current year, what he had when he pulled data at the 1st of October, 13,701. And I mentioned a number to you that I pulled up just shortly to be 13,000, I believe, 791. This is 768. That was from last week whenever I prepare the presentation. The enrollment from last year due to COVID's down at 1.5%. And you can see their projection out for the next 5 years from here. For 21-22, they're projecting us next year to be at 14,220, which is a growth of 3.8%. And again, I believe Bob referenced that as the COVID bump, so students returning plus some anticipated growth on top of that. You can see all the way out to 25-26, we're being projected to be at 15,524, and that would be a growth of 1.7% over a prior year. So after we get through next year, if those projections hold true, our growth rate will be on average in the 2% range for the next 5 years. These are our elementary schools. So I'll just walk across the first one, College Hills, with you, kind of tell you what all these different numbers mean, the shading means, and all those types of things, and then give you a few minutes just to kind of take in all that information. So the school, College Hills, in the parentheses is the capacity number we utilize for that specific facility. So at College Hills, it's 660 students. We take that capacity number and we use the 85 to 110% range as articulated in FC Local. So what we watch for with College Hills is a range of enrollment from 561 to 726. And anything outside of that, we would highlight accordingly. If it's less than 561, I would shade it a light green just to pull it out, showing that it was under that 85% mark. If it's over 726, then I would shade that in the red just to draw attention to the fact that's over the capacity number, the 110% capacity mark. Those are just markers for us. They don't necessarily define to us that we have to do anything in particular other than it just draws that information out for us to be aware of. So College Hills, this year 644. Now, obviously their enrollment's down some from COVID, but I will tell you, for those of you that received this report last year, College Hills was 770 last year. And one of our recommendations from last year is we just did we tried to make some adjustment with some programming, and that has very much, while again, COVID has impacted this, but adjusting some of where our programs are located and moving those to other campuses has very much provided us some much needed space or room to move there at College Hills Elementary School. So in 21-22, they're projecting College Hills to be at 659. You can see in 22-23 at 703 students, so on and so forth, out to the year 25-26 at 721. So that 5-year projection, all of those enrollment numbers fall within that capacity parameter that's articulated in FC Local. So let's pick one that has some shading. Pebble Creek, maybe, for example. A facility number, the capacity number is 620 students. So that 85% to 110 is 527 students to 682. So this year they're at 476. That's less than that 85% marker for FC Local. So that's why that number is shaded in green, just to draw that out and draw attention to it. The following year or next year projected to be 477, 500 the following year, and you can see in the year 23-24, Pebble Creek's projected to be at 533, which is within that that capacity range. That's why it's not shaded. All that to say is it's good not to see red. Okay. We have capacity. Are the enrollments all the same? No, they're not, but we have capacity at the elementary level as projected for the next 5 years. One to watch that I just want to mention to you because it's the only one that came anywhere close. Southwood Valley has a capacity number of 660. If you look all the way out to 25-26, they're projected to be at 726, which is right at that upper level. And that has to do with the Midtown development that Mr. Templeton referenced to us. So we're looking good at the elementary level right now. I think really the numbers we're looking at next year, when maybe we get back to something more normal, or is something they're going to apply their projections to a little more so than our current circumstances, we will start, seeing where we stand. But based on these projections that Bob provides at the elementary level, we're in a good situation right now.
Quick question before you leave that one, just to confirm. It has every program taken into account, including dual
Correct.
language students
Yes, ma'am.
moving campuses. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's kind of what I was going to ask too. And last year we had a couple of elementary schools that were
In red.
in red.
So
moving those programs around made a huge difference.
Well, you have to
I mean, I
remember,
know there's
Ms. Nolan,
COVID.
we lost
I know.
enrollment. And a majority of the enrollment we lost due to COVID is at the elementary level. So it
Right.
almost kind of reset some of your numbers at the elementary level.
Okay. It is nice to not see red though.
Yes, we are positioned well for the foreseeable future here. At the 5-6, so same type of layout as the elementaries. Obviously, only 3 intermediate schools. So I just walk across Cypress Grove. Capacity number for Cypress Grove, 920 students. When we apply the capacity numbers, we have 782 to 1,012. This year, they're 576, are projected to be 567 the following year, and 592, 557, and out to 634 and 25, 26. And this was interesting because I was going to ask Mr. Templeton, why are these numbers going down? But if you remember, he mentioned some of the large cohort groups in the younger grade levels, and that's them working their way out of this system here. So that's all shaded green because all those projected numbers are below the 782. Not necessarily, it's not a bad thing. It is something, down the road, if the board chooses to discuss, we can in a couple of years down the road. I would recommend we get a few more years before we even contemplate any type of conversation on this. Because if you look at Pecan Trail at 925 and their window of 786 to 1018, they're in green for this year and next year. Then they work their way up while still within the capacity number 861. So you got a couple of hundred difference between the two schools, both within the capacity, but there is a little bit difference there. And how we would manage that is just with our staff, our approach to staffing. Obviously, 861 kids require more staffing than 634, so we could meet that need through allocation of staff. The comparability numbers below that, middle column is the economically disadvantaged, the free and reduced percentage for that particular campus, and this was from snapshot of this year. So Cypress Grove is 35.8% free and reduced of their student population. Now what I do is I go through and take a look at the variance and highlight the greatest variance between any two particular campuses. So Cypress, for example, the greatest variance it has between Oakwood and Pecan Trail is Pecan Trail at 10.5%. That falls within that 15% variance that's articulated in policy. For Oakwood and Pecan Trail, you can see the variance at 20.09, which is beyond that 15%, and that's why it's shaded in red. Now, also be mindful here, though, because you'll see it a little bit when we go to the middle school, because the 5 through 8s, we do kind of have a pure feeder that dual language does kind of move that free and reduced lunch number around at Oakwood. So that does have some influence on it by 2 or 3 percentage points. While that's outside the 15%, 20%, my experience through the course of time, if you start trying to chase that number, it's difficult to get it a whole lot closer without creating great disruption. So I think we're in pretty good place on this right now as well. We absolutely have building capacity. I think in the next several years, we just need to watch Pecan Trail, make sure we're staffing it adequately, and just watch how those grow out after that. Similar thing at the middle school. A&M Consolidated Middle School at 920. That means building capacity 782 to 1,012. In the green for the foreseeable future for the next 5 years, as is College Station Middle School. Welborn, obviously capacity at 925. So in that range is 786 to 1,018. So they're within that range and up to 933 in 25-26. So again, within building capacity ranges, future conversation, if we so choose to take it up a couple years down the road, if these projections hold true, if the 900 and the 500 is bothering us, we could have a conversation at that point in time. I don't recommend anything at this point in time. We need to see how our numbers play out. And again, it's not red. We can manage this with differentiated staffing, which is a much easier approach. You can see the variance on comparability. If you remember, the other one was 20%. Dual language ends at 6th grade. So when you move to 7 and 8, that's why you see that variance between the two campuses or that particular feeder pattern go down to right at 18% at A&M Consolidated Middle School and Welborn. Everybody good so far? Any questions? The green and the transparent, that's good. High school. I'm going to start with comparability because I found that absolutely amazing. Variance of 3.6%.
Even with, well, our middle school is all split up.
Yeah, you got to remember,
Right,
all of
right,
our
right.
middle schools feed both ways.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Facility capacity. A&M Consolidated High School capacity number we use is 2350, so you can look at that window from just under 2,000 to just under 2,600. And then you can see the same for College Station High School, building capacity at 1950. Ms. Parkerson would fuss at me for that number and Mr. Grimes, because there's like 2,080 there last year. So maybe I need to change that facility number because they've proven us wrong already. But within the capacity range nonetheless. So I'm going to go straight out to the red at College Station High School. I'm not recommending anything this evening, but let's just have a bit of a conversation here. There is a phase 2 to College Station High School that has always been a part of things. To add classroom space, a third gym, and those types of things. I think even with that red, if you think about it, 2,082, which is comparable to what they had last year as well, to 2,217. I believe there are 4 portables out back at this point in time, but that's a difference of 150 students maybe spread throughout that building. While that is in red, 150 more students is not just a huge difference, okay? It just falls without that outside of that capacity number and range that we're using. But just for the sake of talking about it, so let's say 25, 26. If later down the road in the next couple of years, the board so chose to have the conversation, that number stayed red and it kept getting higher and higher on us, the phase 2 project, if you needed it ready, just for the sake of timing, for the 25-26 school year, which I would argue you don't necessarily need it by then because I think that's still manageable. But let's say you did. You need a year, at least a year for construction. So that would be the 24-25 year. The bond would be November 24, would be, I'm getting myself confused now. You would do the bond in November of 23. So you would need to have the conversation about it in the spring of 23. Okay, so you're still a couple of years, even if there needed to be conversation later on with that, you're still a couple of years out of even entering that conversation or having to do that work to have the second phase on the ground by 25-26 school year, which I don't think is necessary, but just to give you the scope of time, a couple of years, a year for work and a year for the planning and the bond going to the voters. There's been lots of work done on the high schools over the last couple of years. Comparability, you can absolutely, and our enrollment numbers are more in sync than they have been in a while as well. Any questions on high school?
Two questions. One, just to confirm also that the programs that are dedicated to one campus or the other, those are taken into account in
Yes,
these
ma'am.
numbers? Yes, okay. You said 4 portable buildings right now?
I believe that's correct. Ms. Park, Tiffany, is it, or John, is it 4 or 5? 4 portables at this point in time.
I guess two things. What are they being used for, and is there room for more? Is that an option really to explore?
They are, your foreign languages are there, correct? And it's 1 classroom per portable. Are there 2? Okay. Their foreign language folks are out there. Are there more rooms in that back parking lot for another couple of portables? Yes. Because they're housed right behind the cafeteria, kind of in the small parking lot that sits right in front of the football field. And so there's a little bit more space there. Of course, there's additional space other places, but I would think that would be the first place we go.
Because again, the rest of the facility can handle more people, right? It's
The
really just classroom.
infrastructure of the facility was built to manage through the second phase expansion as well. Yes, the infrastructure was built to support a greater enrollment. What's lacking, what phase 2 is classrooms, I believe a 3rd gym and a black box theater. So it's primarily classrooms. But the infrastructure itself, the cafeteria, the common space, all those things were built to manage the second phase classroom build.
Just to, this may be obvious, but those capacity numbers don't include the portables though, right?
It does not.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will tell you, and I'm trying to think back. So Tiffany, we've had the portables there for 2 years. 2 years. And probably at that time, you were already 2,000 students. Yeah. So we have these capacity numbers, Mr. Van, but they've been, yeah, we have put more kids in that at times, yes. Yes, because with the 4 portables, well, she doesn't have 2,082 in-house now, but she had about that in-house last year. Other questions?
Just when it comes to the comparability numbers for the intermediate schools and the middle schools, under FC Local, what are our obligations as a board now?
None. Those are simply markers, and if we want to recommend particular adjustments to address it, we can. I recommend no adjustments to anything at this point in time. But as a board or as administration, we're not obligated to necessarily do anything. That was more a threshold to highlight and begin the conversation. And there are a number of different options listed in the policy, and one of which is take no action at all. And that's what I recommend. If we start chasing the free and reduced lunch numbers, then it's quite possible we mess something else up. And what we have to ask ourselves is being outside of 15% by 3 to 5% worth, rezoning and moving a particular neighborhood. I would argue that I don't think it is.
Right, and I'll agree. As much as I don't like those numbers, it is not worth the disruption that it would take. And Oakwood has been designated a Title I school as well, correct?
Yes. So there obviously is additional funding associated with that.
Right.
I would say to the group that what I would watch for through the course of time, next several years, if your comparability numbers stay, similar, stay tight, probably what I would watch, not that I would necessarily recommend any particular action, but what I would watch more than anything is 620 versus 933, or actually 579 versus 933. That is where I think down the road, let's see if the numbers the next year or two hold true, and if that's something the group, at that time will want to discuss, that might be worth a little bit of the conversation, because you can adjust staffing, but eventually it's just going to start getting full, and then you have one that has quite a bit of room. You might look to try to make an adjustment, and in this particular case, and again, I'm not recommending any adjustments right now. I'm just speculating for the future. Make sure everyone gets that. So with the zones for CSMS and Welborn, and where they're adjacent many places, you could always explore that way down the road if we wanted to try to do that. But I think right now and for the next several years, again, watching the numbers that come in the next year or two after COVID, I think we're very well positioned. I think this particular FC local report is better than probably any of the previous ones I've done over the last 4 or 5 years, just to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, I was going to say, I was going to point out the same thing, that I'm almost, while I don't like the discrepancy with the comparability, really, I would almost be more worried about the capacity differences too. I mean, that's 1.5 times. I mean, it's quite a difference between College Station Middle School and Welborn at some point. And there's pros to being small, and there's pros to being big as well, and but cons to both of those also. So that discrepancy is something we should keep watching. And I would just say, yes, it's way down the road, so we don't have to do anything for a couple of years. But we also, if we do want to do something, we got to make sure we don't do it at the last minute. I think that's something that we have learned in the past, to make sure we just keep watching it every year.
Correct.
That's why we do this. So
And because here I'm looking at 5-8, because what I see is Pecan Trail and Welborn, and enrollments at Cypress and CSMS. So just a couple of years down the road, that is a pure feeder, and that is a zone that's separate from high school and elementary as well. So if the conversation's had in a couple of years, there is a way to tweak 5 through 8 and not touch elementary and high schools. But again, I think we are in very nice shape right now. And I think we just, obviously, as FC Local says, each November, December, we take a look at this and just see how we're tracking. And if there are any recommendations or adjustments, I agree, Ms. McAdams, we do it a couple years in advance, so the students that are there can cycle out and it's implemented with an incoming group of students. So with that, I have no recommended adjustments at this point in time. Questions? Lots of numbers.
Lots of numbers.
I'll be asking you what the projected enrollment is of Pecan Trail in 23-24 here later.
I really like this report. I really do. And so thank you for the previous board members. I think you were on that board, Mr. Nugent, that came up with FC Local. So thank you for board members out there, for past board members.
I'm sure they're all watching right now.
I know. But you can tell them that that we appreciate this and that they thought of this.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great report. It's a great report. That takes us to J2. Consideration, I'm obviously, with no recommendation, we will not take any action. So it'll take us to J2. Consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding the annual financial and compliance report for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2020. Mr. Martindale.
Mr. Oz.
That was quick. Good evening. Tonight we have Miss Rebecca Goldstein with us. She is from the firm of Reaver and Tidwell. She and her team have been spending quite a bit of time with Mr. Lassiter, Director of Business Services, and his team in auditing the district's financial statements and compliance. And she's already gone over it, as mentioned, with the audit committee a little earlier. But she's going to be here to hit some highlights of the report for you and answer any questions you may have. So I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Amy. So you all should have, I believe, a copy of the actual annual financial report. It's about a little over 100-page document, and then there's also a required letter. So what I will do first is go over just the required communication with the board that I went over with the audit committee as well. And then I'll hit some highlights of the annual financial report. And obviously, if you have any questions along the way, please just let me know. So the letter itself is just, as I said, it's required communication to the board. We were hired to obviously provide a financial opinion on the audited financial statements. Those first two paragraphs of the letter really just say that we give we have a materiality aspect, so we cannot look at every single transaction, but it is our responsibility to give you a reasonable but not absolute assurance. So we don't look at every single transaction, as I said. We do a risk-based approach, so we look at where the risks are within the entity and look at it that way. We also look at internal controls, so we don't just look at was the number correct. We looked at how the number was derived, the process of getting something from an initiation through all the way to the financial statements. That being said, we don't give an opinion on the internal controls, but if we were to see something within the processes that we thought there was a control gap, something where maybe there was not accurate segregation of duties or management review controls, we would bring that to the attention of the board. We are also responsible for communicating any significant matters. So you will see, I'm still on page 1 of the letter. We did find what we call a material weakness in internal controls over just specifically compliance for Title I. So how that works is we look at certain federal programs every year as performed under the Single Audit Act. And so if you look at the annual financial report, that finding can be found on page 100. And what that is we looked at 2 different programs this year. We cycle in the different programs every year that we look at. This year we looked at Head Start and Title I. One of the things we found in Title I was that one of the requirements is that for payroll salaries that are paid out of Title I, there has to be regular certifications that from that employee did actually perform Title I activities. And so the district's policy is to do semi-annual certifications for those payrolls, which is a common control that most school districts have. And when we looked at a sample of those, there were some that were misplaced. There were also some, for instance, that some people came on in the middle of the year and weren't on the initial list to make sure that they were certified as Title I employees. So that's where we are on the finding. We did give it a material weakness only because there were the number of files that we couldn't see versus our sample. I will say if it wouldn't have been for that, if we had just had those couple of ones that didn't quite make it onto the certification, it probably would have been a little lesser of a finding. But it is titled Material Weakness and Internal Controls. But again, it's specific to Title I, and it's specific to Title I compliance, if that makes sense. So again, that's on page 100 of the report if you want to look at that. And then management did provide a response. That's on page 102. And if you read that, you can already see that one of the problems it was when you're dealing with paper, obviously you can misplace that paper, and that was part of the problem. So the district has actually already gone to a paperless system of certification, as well as updating the list of employees more than annually to make sure that the employees that work on Title I, that list is updated before each semi-annual certification process. So that corrective action plan has already been put in place, and you can see that on page 102. Okay. So going back to the letter, just part of my required communication. As Amy mentioned, we were out here quite a bit during the audit. It is definitely a group effort with my team and the finance team here at College Station ISD. So we were out here in the middle of the summer, and then we came out after 8/31, after year end, after the books were closed. We are required to be independent of the district, which we are. If you look at the top of page 2 of the letter, you can see that we do talk about non-audit, non-attest services. Those are just services that we provide outside of the audit itself. We do help management prepare the annual financial report, which is considered a non-attest service. That does not mean that we are not independent. It just means that we help put that report together. It's a very standardized report that TEA requires certain schedules and certain orders. And so we do help a lot of school districts actually put those reports together. And so that's considered a non-attest service. Again, does not impair our independence. And we do rely on management to review the reports. The numbers come from management. We've audited the numbers. It's really just a matter of putting the report together. If you look under, on page 2 of the letter, significant accounting policies, really we just point out note 1 goes over the accounting policies within the district, so that's an important note to read as you're reading through the financials. Also, significant accounting estimates. If you look under there, we have 6 of those listed. It's not unusual for financial reports to have estimates. So to point out the estimates in the financial statements, which are common to ISDs, you do have an allowance for uncollectible taxes. So that's an estimate on the amount of tax revenue that you do not think you will be able to collect in the near future. We also put foundation school program state aid revenue on there because those allotments are estimated based on certain inputs like average daily attendance. So we do look at those inputs and we do consider that an estimate. You do have an accrual for a claims incurred but not reported for your self-insurance workers' comp. So that's considered an estimate as well. We also look at depreciation expense because that is based on an estimated useful life of your fixed assets. So we look at that. And then, of course, your net pension and your net OPEB liability. Those are estimates that actually come straight from an actuarial valuation that it comes from a TRS report. They hire the actuaries, and then every school district has their certain percentage of those liabilities. So that's considered an estimate as well. And what we do with those estimates is we look at them every year. Obviously, the ones that come from an actuarial report, we tie those numbers in. If they have to do with management judgment, like allowance and things like that, we look at the history of the estimate. We make sure that all of the inputs are consistent. And we didn't find any problem with any estimates this year. If you look at page 3 of the letter, we didn't have any significant difficulties during the audit, so that's always good. We also did not have any uncorrected or corrected misstatements, which means that when we came into the audit and we received the numbers, they were good numbers. We didn't have to adjust a bunch of things. We made the typical adjustments that you would to get from fund level statements to government wide. But other than that, the numbers were good. We didn't have to make a lot of adjusting entries. So that is very good. No disagreements with management. We also, under representations requested from management, we do always require a signed management representation letter. And what that is just, it's a signed letter from management that says that they provided us everything that we asked for, that it's true and factual what they provided us, and that they didn't mislead us in any way. Other significant matters and findings, nothing to report there. If you look on the last page, it's titled Other Information and Documents Containing Audited Financial Statements. The AFR itself has a lot of information in it. We don't provide an audit opinion on everything in the financial statements. I will tell you, because everything has a number attached to it almost, we look at everything, and we do on a lot of the schedules provide an in relation to opinion, which means that if it's numbers and it's statistics or things like that that are coming from the audited financial statement numbers, we tie all of those out. So that's what we do for the other information, such as the MD&A, your RSI schedules in the back, things like that. Okay, so that's my required communication to the board. I'll take you through a very high level of the AFR. Again, it's about a 100-page document, so if you just can't go to sleep tonight, start reading, and I'm sure it'll get you, but it's good stuff. It is, like I said, it's very standardized as far as what TEA looks for in the documents. So we do provide 3 different opinions, so I'll point those out there. Our first independent auditor's report is on page 3. One thing to note there, that is an unmodified opinion, so that's the cleanest and best opinion you can get. So congratulations to management and team for that. If you look Right after the independent auditor's report, there's a management's discussion and analysis section. That's really a good section to look at your financial highlights, because the financials themselves present one single year. The MD&A often goes through the differences between last year and last year and current year and budget, those types of things. So it's really kind of a good catch-all for your financial highlights for the year. After the MD&A, you have your Exhibit A, A1, and A2. A1 and B1. Those are what we call your government-wide financial statements, and then following those are your fund level. So the difference between those is your government-wide is more of your commercial entity level financial statements, what you would see there. You have all of your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities on there, like your capital assets and your debt. Your fund level does not have that information. So that's the key difference between the two statements. And then between those two statements, there's reconciliations. So for instance, on page 23, Exhibit C1R, it shows you the reconciliation between your government funds and your net position for your government activities. So you can see there the main differences are your long-term liabilities and your long-term assets, and things like your deferred outflows and your deferred inflows for your pension and your OPEB. So all of that right there. I will point out on the if you look on page 17 on the statement of net position, you do have a net position for your government activities at 43.6 million. Your unrestricted is actually a negative 47.6 million. That's really due to implementation of GASB 75 a couple years back, where you had to put the OPEB liability on your statements. So that's not uncommon to see there. If you look at page 27, that is also, that's where it starts your proprietary funds. So anytime you have proprietary funds or more of your revenue generating funds, so those are going to be your kid camps and your summer camps. That's within your business type activities right there. And then you have your internal service fund, which is your workers' compensation. So pages 27, 28, and 29 are those statements, which include cash flows for your proprietary funds. And then page 30, Exhibit E1, is your fiduciary funds. That's really where the district is fiduciary of things like your campus activity funds, where you hold the money. So you can see there you have assets and liabilities that equal each other. And then after your financial statements, you have all of your notes, starting on page 31. So if you do look at your financial statements and you are unsure of a number, usually it is described in the notes. So that's always a good supplement to the statements itself. If you look on page 60, you will see that we did include subsequent events. There was one subsequent event, and what that is any event that occurs after the 8/31 year end, but before we issue, if it's something that we need to disclose. So we did disclose there the issuance of refunding bonds that occurred in October. We have a small paragraph there related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we also have a section, recent accounting pronouncements, that just gives you an idea of what's coming up, changes in the GASB world that will affect the look of your financial statements there. Behind that, you have your RSI, your required supplemental information. If you look at Exhibit G1, that really gives you, your fund level statements are where you do the level that you do your budgets at. So in Exhibit G1, you can see your general fund budget to actual, your original, your final, and your actual. So you can see that actual in the general fund, net change of fund balance was a negative 1.7 million. And talking to management and looking at the financials, that was mainly due to tax refunds. And there was also a decrease in state aid this year that was supplemented by the CARES Act funding. But because the district didn't spend all that CARES Act funding, it is reflected in this negative 1.7. So there were some school districts, you could spend the money this year that you actually could have pre-award costs going through around mid-March, or some school districts are spending the majority of their money next year. So that is where College Station stands. So what that means is that CARES Act funding, what we call ESSERs, will more than likely be looked at next year in terms of how you spent the money, and it'll be part of your schedule of expenditures of federal awards in the back on there for next year. Anything else? There, under supplementary information on page 75, just want to point those out. Those are all of your, starting on page 76, those are all of your individual special revenue funds that don't get classified as a major fund, meaning they're not big enough to present by themselves in the statements at the beginning of the report. So if you, all of your smaller funds here are presented individually, and then they roll up to the front under the title of non-major funds. There is more budget to actual information as well, starting on page 90 and 91, because there's budgets for the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program, Exhibit J2 on page 90, and then on page 91, a budget to actual for debt service fund as well. And then starting on page 94, that is our government auditing standards opinion. Because you are considered a government entity and you get federal and state funding, we do give this opinion as well. This is on top of our independent auditor report. This means that we do take a deeper dive into looking at compliance. So not just federal compliance, but we look at compliance with PFIA, we look at compliance with procurement standards, we look at compliance with TEA PIC codes. So we look at a lot of compliance areas and internal controls over those compliance areas as well. And then on page 97, that is our opinion on the major federal programs that we audited. So you can see that's a 2-page opinion, and then on page 99 starts the schedule of findings of question costs, and that's a summary of that opinion. So we did issue an unmodified opinion, so there was no material noncompliance. It's an unmodified opinion. We had no internal control findings over reporting, and then internal control over major programs. We've listed the one that I talked about under Title I. It's listed right there, and then following that on page 100 is the finding itself. And then, as I said, on page 102, you can see management's response to the finding. And then the last schedule is Exhibit K1. That's the schedule of expenditures of federal award. That lists out every federal award that the district received this year and the money that they spent within the fiscal year. I think that is all of my required communications. If anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. That was a quick overview. I know it's a lot of pages. So, as like she said, you're doing some nighttime reading. If you come across any other questions, please feel free to call me or email me, and would be glad to answer those and walk you through it. But I would ask for your consideration of approval of this financial report tonight.
Amy, just quick summary. So I'm looking back at page 65, Exhibit G1, that's our general fund.
Yes, sir.
We adopted a deficit of 3.38 million. Our final audit number is a deficit of 1.7, correct? And that includes a tax refund of 940,000 in that number, correct?
Correct.
So our fund balance will go 37.8 to 36.1, correct?
Yes, sir.
So our adopted budget reduced it to half of the deficit, and that included a tax refund that we could not have projected at all when we began the budget process.
Yeah, the two major things are that, and of course, then the reduction of revenue for the CARES and ESSER funds. Those are the two major hits on that 1.7 million.
Do we have any other questions or a motion?
I move to accept the annual financial and compliance report as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Except I would like to say, did you really just say if we're doing this for late night reading and we have a question to call you?
The next day. You can email me. I'll answer.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear.
After you
Okay.
read it.
So
The
we
next
have a
morning.
motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? The motion passes 7-0.
Thank
you
you.
all so much. Takes us to J3, consider approval of an amendment to the funding source for the technology purchase in the amount of $249,936 from Avanext on September 15th, 2020, to be $228,957 from the general fund and $20,979 from ESSER or CARE Act funds. Mr. Martindale.
Yes, sir. And Amy will go through this in detail, but it is taking a technology purchase the board approved on September the 15th, changing the funding source. In doing that funding source becomes eligible for reimbursement. Yes. So Amy will provide us a little more detail as to what exactly that looks like. Right. Ms. Strauss?
So back in September, I actually made the recommendation to purchase these technology devices from our ESSER CARES Act funds. Some of those that we postponed, we needed those devices for the classrooms and for the virtual learners. Then in November, they expanded Project Connectivity. If you'll recall, that was helping with some other devices for a prior purchase program. In this program, they would reimburse districts for specific technology type things that they purchased or we purchased between May 20th of 2020 and December 11th of 2020. One of the criteria to make it eligible is that it could not be purchased from federal funding sources. And ESSER CARES Act is a federal fund. So tonight, asking for your consideration to amend what that's going to do by moving the $228,957 from ESSER to the general fund could make us eligible for up to $171,000 of reimbursement under this program. So in essence, move it to the general fund, but we'll also get some relief for those purchases.
And we get to keep the federal funds and use it for somewhere else.
Yes, what we'll do is probably substitute some other qualifying expenditures. We've had a lot of things with COVID and PPE and those types of things, so we'll be using it for something else.
Do we have any questions?
Is there any possibility that doesn't get approved?
We've submitted the application. Technology services, they have gone through them. Everything is qualified underneath that. It has to be received by December 31st and paid, which most of this already has been. So we don't think so. If anything, the dollar amount of the reimbursement could be under question. There's 2 rounds, and we got into the first round, so that's a good thing. But should they not have enough monies, they may lower it, the percentage that will be able to be reimbursed. And that's why I said up to about $171,000. We really feel like as long as we got into round 1, we will be able to get that maximum funding.
Okay, then I move the approval of an amendment to the funding source for the technology purchase from Avanext.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, with none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
You've had a busy night.
I do.
She's not done.
She's not done. She's not. All right, takes us to J4. Yeah, I guess you'll just stay right there. Consider approval of the purchase of an annual license for Cardnex, a master scheduling software from Education Advanced in the amount of $62,901, utilizing buy-board pricing. The purchase will be made from the general fund and CSISD Foundation funds. Mr. Martindale. Or
Right. It's okay. I know how it feels. I've stood up there a long time before.
That's okay. Thank you. Over the past several months, there has been a team of individuals that have been researching master scheduling software. It is a massive process trying to align student needs with their four-year plan and the staffing requirements, and trying to make it all match and come out correctly. So they've been looking at this. They have identified Cardinex as the product that would be most advantageous to College Station ISD, and would like to get it in place to utilize for the master scheduling process for the 21-22 school year. It is under buy board. The cost is $62,901 for year one. So being the tight year that it is, we said it is a very good product, and everybody that looked at it has thought it would add great value to College Station ISD, trying to maximize the student request and provide some efficiency in staffing and some data behind that. So we looked to identify some funding for that. And campuses, secondary campuses have agreed to fund part of it this year with their budgets. And College Station Education Foundation also stepped up in the amount of $25,000 to help with us start off with year one. Year two is under $50,000. Year one is higher because of the training and implementation that's involved. So tonight we would ask for your approval tonight to purchase this annual license of Cardonics in the amount of $62,901 using buy board pricing. It will be purchased from the general fund and CSISD foundation funds, which is a special revenue fund.
I guess the district sent their master saleswoman to the Education Foundation.
We
because,
did.
because the Education Foundation voted to approve to support this unanimously. So whatever y'all are doing with the saleswoman, I guess keep sending her out.
We sent the best one we had.
That worked out in the favor of everybody.
Well,
So,
Mr. Horak is because everyone in Education Foundation, she was their principal or counselor. So
somewhere around there,
they're all
right?
scared of her.
But I thought that was part of the deal. I thought she had to come present tonight as well.
Yeah. So no, this is
The hook.
I think I said it in the Education Foundation meeting. This is a huge bonus for all of our teachers and counselors and staff, because the undertaking of all this. So I'm excited to be on board with this on the Education Foundation side, and then on this. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
So if no other discussion.
Another question?
I'll entertain a motion I'll motion to consider approval of the purchase of an annual license for Cardinex, a master scheduling software from Education Advanced, in the amount of $62,901 utilizing buy board pricing. Purchase will be made from the general fund and College Station ISD Education Foundation funds.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just that I think it is overdue. I was a little surprised that we, didn't have this type of software. And I love all of the benefits that you've listed, not only for the staffing and the efficiency that can be gained from our staff, but also for the students as well, to getting their first choices of classes. And because I think that is a real benefit that can be seen from it. So I look forward to it, hopefully.
I was also at the meeting where the master sales person was there, and I also was shocked that this was not something that we did not already have.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, the way it currently works is you build out the system on a board, you take that framework, you input it into the computer, and then the computer dumps all the student requests in there, and it runs your report, shows you your class sizes and all that. You have to literally go back to the board and go and make adjustments, take those adjustments, enter them into the system, and run a whole new batch overnight. And so many times when you have fixed a problem, you've created another one. This particular system is much more automated. It can show you those results and give you options immediately, as opposed to running a batch of student requests. This is probably 10 years overdue.
Well, and it's exciting to see organizations from across the district coming together and almost everyone putting some skin in the game saying, we want this. We need this. So any other discussion, questions? We have our motion. We have our second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
I think you're done.
I'm done.
All right. That will take us to K1, consider approval of the design proposal from VLK Architects for athletic field lighting improvement at A&M Consolidated High School and College Station High School in the amount of $72,000 utilizing 2015 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. Our hopes in the future is to come to the board with a proposal for updating, purchasing new lighting systems at both of our comprehensive stadiums. They are not functioning up to snuff at this point in time. Prior to going out for a request for proposal, though, we need the designs and specs drawn up to put out for bid. And this is for that service. But I'll stop Mr. Hall with more details on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Nugent, members of the board. I am pleased to present a sports lighting proposal to you this evening that has the potential to literally pull us out of the dark ages, at least at the football stadiums. So, a little background for this. I always like to mention back in November of 2015, the voters of College Station ISD passed a bond package for us for $135.9 million for new construction and renovation to district facilities. Since that time, all identified projects have been completed. And we've entered the bonus round of being able to pick up additional renovation projects with the savings left from the original projects. One project that's been identified as a significant need is the replacement of the sports lighting at the athletic stadiums at both Consol High School and College Station High School. Lighting levels recommended by UIL should be a minimum of 50 foot candles, which is a measure of the intensity of illumination for sports events. And right now, both of our existing stadiums currently measure 26 foot candles of illumination, or roughly half of the recommended amount. And if you've been out there and seen some of the games, you probably noticed it's a little more dim than it's been in the past. The basis of this design would be to establish an illumination level of at least 50 foot candles with an alternate to increase it on further to 75 foot candles, which is the level that's desired by the coaches. The intent would also be to change the existing light fixtures to light emitting diode or LED light fixtures for a couple of reasons. One being that they're much brighter, and the second that they're a great electricity savings. They don't use as much electricity, and so we get a little savings based on that as well. College Station ISD has requested and received a proposal from VLK Architects, our officially selected architectural firm for all 2015 bond work, to design this project for a total of $72,000. If approved, this would cover all of the plans and specifications we would need to put this project out for competitive seal proposal bids in the near future. And I'd like to add too, our intent would be to do this work during the summer of 2021. So if we can put all the pieces together within the next month or two, like Mr. Martindale said, we should be coming back to you with that proposal as well. So it is recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees approve the design proposal from VLK Architects for $72,000 to design the sports lighting renovation project at both A&M Consolidated High School and at College Station High School stadiums, utilizing 2015 bond funds, and authorize that design work to commence. And with all that, I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
Without any questions, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the design proposal for VLK Architects for athletic field lighting improvement at A&M Consolidated High School and College Station High School in the amount of $72,000, utilizing 2015 bond funds.
One thing before the second, is this?
think
Can I
once
not
we've
do-
done this, we need to have a second, then we can have some
Okay,
discussion.
I'm sorry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I think so. Just for clarification purposes, athletic field lighting, are we talking about all athletic fields, just football fields? I'm not sure what we were describing, and maybe you said it in the previous statements, but.
Well, if I wasn't clear enough now, I'll try to be more clear now. I'd say that it's the big lights that shine down on the football field playing surface itself, as well as the track.
Okay.
It's at the football stadiums.
At both football stadiums. Right.
Just wanted to make sure I was
Oh,
understanding.
good question, yeah. Did VLK do the light design for either of these previous, for the lights that we currently have?
They didn't do either one of them before. Consolidated High School, that was built in about 88 or 89, so it's over 30 years old. It's kind of a different situation for each school. The lights at Consol have died more of a natural death, slow dimming over about 30 years. The ones at College Station High School were only put in at about 2011, which makes them a very different situation. Those light fixtures have started to fail way before they should have. They were, of course, under warranty, and we've replaced several of them, some of them twice. And in fact, what we found out is the manufacturer had some serious quality control issues, and they have since gone bankrupt as a result. So it sounds like some of the other customers out there came after them too. So long and short of it is we're stuck at College Station High School with some lights that look like they're 30 years old. So, and this is, of course, the attempt to pick up both of those at the same time.
You talked about doing, having this done with another architect, or why VLK?
Because VLK was our officially selected architect for 2015 bond package, and this is being paid for out of 2015 bond funds. And they do have all of the consultants that would typically work on this, electrical engineers and everything along with them.
So would that mean then that the amount of their bid really wouldn't matter? We'd have to go with them?
I'm sorry, say that one more.
If we're going with them because they're the 2015 official architect, then what does it matter what their bid is? I guess if their bid was 72,000 or if it was 172,000, would we have to go with them?
We wouldn't necessarily have to do the project at all. The main reason it was brought up was that this was a project that wasn't on anyone's radar until this point. So,
well, I guess I might be assuming too much about Ms. McAdams' question, but is this something we should ask other architects to give us a bid on?
Not since it's in the 2015 bond package. If we were paying for it elsewhere, then we would definitely open that up to allow others to take a shot at it, basically.
Let me help you a little bit. That's okay. I think part of it also is that an architect has different fees depending on the project. So we do have an agreement with them that, whereas it's a certain percentage if you're doing a large building that's several $1 million, we also have an agreement that's like a sliding scale. So that's how that 72,000. So a smaller project, of course, is a higher percentage. They still have a lot of time with the electrical and that sort. And, to bring in a different architect at this point, like I said, with these smaller projects, it's very difficult. So they know the district, from that bond program and the amount of work that they've done. But we do have an agreement based on the sliding scale and the size of the project for the fee.
Okay, so this $72,000 number is based upon that
Yes,
previous
it's based
agreement.
upon a previous
Gotcha.
contract with a sliding scale due to size. It's not, renovations too have usually a higher percentage than new construction because they never know when they get in there what they're going to find. So that's how that particular fee came about.
Okay.
If that helps
Yeah,
explain.
I guess that was more of just a general question as opposed
Right.
to this particular.
Right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Hall, I'm assuming that they were responsible for the design of, and I know it's a much smaller scale, but for the lighting at Welborn Middle School.
That's correct.
Okay, so,
Yes.
and I've been there, I've not noticed anything good or bad, so I would think that's probably, I mean, we're pleased with their design there.
Correct. They did do the work at Welborn Middle School, and we did use LED lights over there, and they've worked very, very well thus far.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, sir. And with that, that takes us to end adjournment. And we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.